There is a truth that very few are willing to face. You are not poor because you lack money. You are poor because you have turned away from the calling of your own soul. Money is not a reward. It is a result, and if you find yourself exhausted by the endless cycle of striving, disappointment, and starting over, then effort is not what you need more of. What you need is a new self. This video is not merely about how to become wealthy. It is a wake-up call. It is a journey leading you back to a truth you once knew but have long forgotten. Listen closely, because sometimes a single truth heard at the right moment can change an entire life. Poverty does not come from the absence of money, but from being out of alignment with the calling of your soul. It does not begin with an empty wallet, but with an invisible distance between your soul and the way you are living. It happens when a person gradually loses connection with the sacred within and replaces it with calculated efforts to merely survive. You can still work hard, earn money, and spend responsibly, yet remain trapped in a constant state of lack, anxiety, and restlessness, not because you are not capable, but because you have strayed from your true self. When life is driven only by logic and responsibility, while the soul is left forgotten in a dark corner, that is the root of poverty. Each morning, you wake up, check the clock, fulfill your duties. You call that living, but deep inside, a hollow space grows larger. Nothing fills it. The goals you set, the money you earn, the accomplishments you collect, they all offer only momentary comfort. Then the emptiness returns. Maybe you don't say it out loud, but you feel it. Something is off. A direction is wrong. And that is not a negative emotion. It is the subtle signal of a soul urging you to remember that you were not born just to exist. You were born to live awake. True poverty is when you no longer know where you are going or why, when your actions no longer come from clarity, but from habit, when your dreams are no longer a calling, but merely rewards to soothe your fatigue. This kind of poverty is not measured in numbers, but in the distance between you and the deeper life that is waiting for your return. Many people make money but live with the mindset of the poor. Others may have little yet radiate a kind of prosperity that cannot be explained, because they live in alignment with their inner voice. The soul does not need you to become rich at any cost. It only asks you to return to your axis. When that happens, external abundance will follow as a natural consequence. No forcing, no comparison, no struggle. All good things come to the place that matches their frequency. If you have not yet touched true wealth, do not rush to blame the market, the times, or others. Observe how far you have drifted from yourself. Maybe you chose safety over truth. Maybe you stayed silent when your soul was speaking. And maybe you abandoned the original blueprint of your life just to follow a temporary plan drawn by someone else. The greatest pain of a person is not failure, but succeeding on the wrong path. Many have achieved what they once thought they wanted, only to find it cannot nourish even the smallest part of their soul. They are not poor in wealth, but depleted in life because they never pause to ask, what truly calls my name? What truly makes me feel alive? If wealth does not come with inner harmony, then it is only a shiny display on the shell of an empty vessel, and no one can live long in that state without paying a price. The restoration of prosperity begins with return, not a return to the past, but to the origin within you, the place where you once knew what you wanted without needing to explain it, the place where your actions were driven by something greater than gain. When you rediscover that truth, everything begins to shift, not in flashy ways, but in deep, lasting ones. You will begin to feel peace without needing to rush You will begin to realize that you no longer have to try so hard to be seen. And strangely, it is precisely when you live truthfully that all external values begin to gather. The outer world is only a mirror. If your inner world is misaligned, your outer world will be chaotic. If your inner world is clear, the world will begin to respond to you as a reflection. Wealth, in its truest sense, is the alignment between who you are and what you know is right. When you dare to choose that path, you no longer chase money, you attract it, not through strategy, but through an unshakable presence from within. You do not need to shout to prove anything. Your presence will create its own gravity. So if something feels empty within you, do not rush to fill it with a financial plan. Listen, perhaps it is the first invitation not to earn more, but to live truer. Real wealth does not begin after you have made enough. It begins the moment you are brave enough to turn inward and ask yourself, am I truly living in alignment with what I know is real? That is the starting point. And it is also the only place poverty cannot reach. Wealth is hidden knowledge, revealed only when you are ready to receive it. Not everyone can perceive the truth hidden within this world, because there are truths that cannot be found in books, cannot be spoken by great teachers, and cannot be passed on through conventional strategies for getting rich. These truths only unfold when the mind becomes still, when a person stops looking outward and begins to turn inward. Wealth is not a result. It is a byproduct of awakening, and that awakening does not come to those who cling to logic and analysis, but only reveals itself to those who are quiet enough to hear the voice of what has never been named. It is a living knowledge. It is unlike any knowledge you have studied. It cannot be explained by reasoning, nor can it be imitated. It is like the light slipping through the crack of a door at dawn. You do not see it until you are standing in the right place. And the strange thing is, you cannot force yourself to be ready. You can only clear away the barriers, let go of old beliefs, empty your mind from the noise of comparison and expectation. When you are truly silent, you will begin to hear. When you truly stop, you will begin to see wealth begins in that place, a place without ambition, but full of awareness. Have you ever wondered why, from the same teaching, the same opportunity, one person changes their life while another remains trapped in the same old cycle? It is not because one is smarter or luckier. It is because one has reached the inner state in which truth can be received without distortion. They are open enough to understand, humble enough to learn, and committed enough to transform. How many times have you heard something and felt as if it were calling your name? A line of text, a spoken phrase, a moment of stillness in the midst of all the noise. For a brief second, you feel something great stir inside you, but then you brush it off because of work, because of responsibilities, because life won't let you stop. That was the invitation. The first invitation of hidden knowledge. It is never loud. It does not fight for your attention. It waits, and if you are not ready, it will disappear as if it never came. But if you stop, truly stop, it will lead you into another world, a world where wealth is no longer something to chase, but something you naturally become. You are listening not just with your ears, but with something deeper inside you, with presence, with the ability to not react too quickly, not judge, but simply listen. And that is why what is being shared right now is not for everyone. It is only revealed to those who are truly ready to look directly into themselves, without blaming, without making excuses. Only one thing is required: the willingness to receive the truth, even if it forces you to change the way you see your entire life. And now, I want to ask you one question, not for you to answer right away, but to carry with you like a seed. The question is this: are you truly ready? Not ready to get rich, but ready to look directly at what inside you is blocking wealth from arriving? Are you still holding on to old thoughts, outdated ideas, limiting beliefs that you have mistaken for truth? And if you are, do you have the courage to lay them down? Let that question touch you in silence. Do not rush to answer it, because sometimes the most honest answers only come after a long silence. Thank you for being here, not by accident, but because some part of you knows it is time for change. Not a change of job, environment, or financial strategy, but a change in how you receive reality at the deepest level. Hidden knowledge is always there, light as the wind, quiet as mist. It cannot be possessed, but it can be joined. It cannot be chased, but it can be invited. And once it opens, you will no longer be the same. You will no longer see wealth as something to fight for, but as a reality waiting for you to remember. This world has never lacked abundance. The only thing missing is the people who know how to receive it at a higher level of consciousness. Every door you are searching for is already inside you. And the moment you begin to live as if those doors are already open is the moment you awaken the greatest thing that has been asleep within you. It is not money that will save you. It is not a new skill that will set you free. It is when you touch the hidden knowledge within that, everything else begins to find its place. From that moment on, you no longer need to search for anything outside of yourself, because everything has already begun within you. Wealth is not a desire. It is the resonance between soul and mind. It does not arise from wishing or chasing it feverishly. It is not something that belongs on a list of what you want, nor does it respond to efforts driven only by fear or pressure. Wealth only begins to appear when your mind and soul resonate like two instruments vibrating at the same frequency. One knows where it is going, and the other knows why the path is worth walking. When only the mind is in motion while the soul remains silent, you may find yourself rushing into action but feeling lifeless. When only the soul longs but the mind lacks clarity, you remain dreaming without moving very far. Only when both are in harmony does true, lasting prosperity begin to unfold. You can want many things, set clear goals, plaster your walls with reminders of wealth. But if within you there is still fear, doubt, or a deep disbelief in your worthiness, then all effort remains at the surface. Like a boat with oars but no compass, you may row hard and long, only to return to the same starting point. That is the trap of desire without foundation. Desire itself is harmless, but when it is not accompanied by the agreement of the soul, it turns into chaotic yearning, draining you more than guiding you. On the other hand, when you truly connect with what you call wealth, you stop chasing it. You begin to adjust yourself to become the kind of space where wealth can reside. You no longer demand the universe to change. You change your own field. You no longer beg for favorable circumstances. You become the person who matches what you seek. That resonance cannot be reduced to hollow advice like believe in yourself or think positive. It is a deeper process, a reconstruction in every thought, every emotion, and every small action of your day. It requires you to examine your entire belief system. Do you secretly believe you must sacrifice happiness to have money? Do you believe the wealthy are luckier, smarter, or less moral than you? Are you holding on to hidden conflicts between wanting wealth and feeling guilty for even thinking about it? Every small belief like that creates dissonance between your soul and your mind. And the paradox is, you cannot resonate with something you secretly believe is wrong. Wealth, in its deepest sense, has nothing to do with your bank balance. It is the inevitable result when a person enters a state of clarity, honesty, and inner alignment, It comes not because you are more deserving than others, but because you have stopped resisting yourself. There is no longer a conflict between what you want and what you believe, no longer a gap between the deepest calling and the daily choice, and no longer a tug of war between the urge to grow and the habit of self-limitation. When you reach that state, every action gains power. Every step generates resonance. And it is that resonance that becomes the path to lasting abundance. If you observe those who are truly successful, you will notice they carry an inner consistency. They do not need to shout their intentions. They do not need to prove themselves to anyone. They act as if what they seek is already real, not out of arrogance, but because they believe without needing proof. That belief, not a perfect plan, is the strongest foundation. It is the meeting point between soul and mind, where everything that can happen begins to become what is happening. Those who do not understand this will always live in contradiction. On one hand, they long to live differently. On the other, they do not dare to believe they can. On one hand, they desire financial freedom. On the other, they still behave like someone under control. On one hand, they talk of big dreams. On the other, they choose compromise in every small decision. Every act that strays from inner truth weakens their resonance. Every time they refuse to listen to their soul, they are refusing the very wealth they believe they are pursuing. Resonance is not something created through effort alone. It is the outcome of courageous alignment, living with belief that needs no evidence, living with values that need no applause, living with direction that needs no agreement. When you step into that state, everything begins to change, not because the world favors you more, but because you become a clear, unwavering point of attraction, and the world, like a mirror, simply fulfills its role. Wealth has never been far from you. It is only waiting for you to pause, to adjust your frequency, and to step into resonance, not through dreaming, not through blind effort, but through absolute clarity in every choice. That is the place where you no longer need to pursue, because what you are seeking has already begun seeking you. The wealthy understand this. True wealth is an inner state, not an external pursuit. Truly, wealthy people do not chase money. They do not hunt for opportunities, nor do they depend on strategies or perfect timing. They simply live from a state of being that has already been shaped within, where prosperity is not a goal, but a natural reflection of deep inner clarity. For them, wealth does not come after everything goes according to plan. It is a felt reality built from unwavering belief and the knowing that they already exist in a world of abundance, where all good things can unfold without force. This is not hollow confidence, but a quiet and steady understanding accumulated through self-observation, inner correction, and patiently cleansing every outdated belief and invisible limit that society implanted early on. Most people live with the idea that wealth is a destination, a reward handed out after they have worked hard enough, suffered long enough, or sacrificed greatly. But the wealthy know the opposite is true. Wealth does not arrive to reward you. It begins when you start living as someone who already possesses it in mind. The inner sense of sufficiency emits a frequency that causes the outer world to shift in alignment. If you act as though you are lacking, every decision will be colored by fear, and fear cannot create lasting prosperity. The inner world is the root of all external manifestations. The wealthy know this. They may not say it, but they live by this principle every day. They do not wait for a reason to feel wealthy. They begin from a state of mental abundance and allow everything else to follow. This is not spiritual bypassing or denial of hardship. It is a truth anyone can witness by paying close attention to how they think and respond. Every time you grasp for an opportunity out of fear of losing it, you create an anxious internal state. Every time you compare yourself to others and feel inferior, you drain energy from yourself. And every time you act just to be recognized, you are unknowingly affirming that you are not yet enough. The wealthy do not live with the need to be proven right. They are not always correct, but they are at peace with being misunderstood. They do not need praise to believe in their worth, because they understand that what matters most is not what you have, but who you are becoming. The state of wealth is a special form of presence. It is not loud, but it has gravity. It does not seek attention, but it naturally draws it. It does not strive to appear strong, but it always creates a sense of safety. The truth is, many people still act as if wealth is something far away. They use words like will or if. They speak of a time when things are better, and then they will begin to live fully. But the strange thing is, the truly wealthy have left all such assumptions behind. They live now as if what they desire is already a natural part of them. And that very way of being opens a current that others may call luck, opportunity, or even miracle. You cannot generate true prosperity if every morning you wake up feeling lack. You cannot build a life of abundance if you still believe someone else needs to come help you, or that you need better circumstances or a more favorable market. Those things may support you, but they are not the root, and that root lies within. Building wealth does not begin with action. It begins with an inner state that has been reprogrammed, a state of unconditional acceptance that you are on your rightful path, that you do not need to prove anything in order to live fully. If you look only at what the wealthy do, you may become confused, but if you observe how they think and feel, you will notice one common thread. They live from within. They know exactly who they are. They do not let the world define their value. And when the inner world is stable, outer actions carry weight. A single step taken at the right time with clear energy is far more powerful than hundreds taken in fear and haste. Wealth does not require you to change your essence. It only requires you to pause and remember that everything you are seeking begins with what you believe to be true. When you believe prosperity is your natural state, you will begin to see it everywhere. When you stop seeing money as the answer, you will see it as a natural outcome. When you stop striving to get something and instead live as someone who already has it, you begin to resonate with a higher reality. And when that happens, every past effort begins to make sense. Not because it produced a result, but because it brought you to the place where wealth is no longer a goal, it is the inevitable. The secret of attraction. Consciousness shapes financial reality. It is not action that creates your financial reality, but the consciousness behind that action. In the same job, one person creates lasting income, while another merely scrapes by. In the same market, one sees opportunity, while another sees only risk. With the same starting point, one builds a solid foundation, while another struggles endlessly with instability. The difference does not lie in the circumstances, but in the level of awareness each person brings. Consciousness acts as a lens, determining what you see, what you feel, and therefore how you act. And it is precisely the repeated actions emerging from that level of consciousness that create the entire material reality you are experiencing. Those who have not yet realized this will continue to live as though money comes from the outside, as though life is a series of random events. They try to control, predict, grasp, and arrange everything outside of them. But all those efforts are like trying to fix the reflection in the mirror without touching the mirror itself. They feel exhausted, frustrated, and easily discouraged, not because they lack effort, but because their effort does not originate from the right place, a place where consciousness has been recalibrated toward expansion, strength, trust, and alignment with abundance. Every person lives within an invisible energy field shaped by their deepest beliefs, emotions, and thoughts. That field acts like a constant frequency, silently attracting circumstances, people, and opportunities that match it. This is not superstition, nor is it a mystical theory. It is a natural principle of life. Just as when you feel anxious, everything around you becomes heavy. People seem less patient, and even small things feel overwhelming, not because the world has changed, but because you are operating from a limited state of consciousness. On the other hand, when you are in a state of peace, clarity, and trust, you begin to see what once felt like obstacles as opportunities to grow. You approach challenges not with fear, but with curiosity and a readiness to find solutions. Those who sustain long-term wealth are not necessarily better at predicting the market. They are better at adjusting themselves. They do not chase trends. They manage their own energy. And from that, they create a unique field of attraction. Your financial reality does not reflect your true worth. It reflects the consciousness you are carrying. If you believe that money only comes through struggle, then struggle will be the only path you can perceive. If you believe wealth belongs to others, your subconscious will never allow you to enter that space. If you assume that failure is the end, you will retreat before reaching the bigger doors. These are all extended effects of your original level of consciousness. Consciousness determines how you see the world, and how you see the world determines what you create in it. If you believe opportunities are rare, you will always feel deprived and in competition. But if you believe true value always finds its way, you will no longer be swept up in comparison and doubt. You will focus on developing your inner capacity because you understand that the inner world governs the outer one. Those who grasp this principle do not work just to make money. They work to keep their consciousness aligned. Because they know money is merely the result, there is a simple truth that is often overlooked. You can only attract what matches the frequency you emit. You cannot create a new reality from an old consciousness. You cannot enter the space of abundance while holding on to outdated beliefs about scarcity. You cannot expect miracles while behaving like someone who is still limited. The real transformation begins when you stop trying to change the world and start transforming the consciousness that creates it. What you need is not another tool, a better method, or a magical business strategy. What you need is a new self, a reset, in a world that operates with clarity, strength, and fullness. When your consciousness changes, your energy changes. When energy shifts, action gains power. And when action flows from the right frequency, material results begin to align. At that point, you no longer need to ask how to make money. The only question that remains is how to maintain the state of consciousness that resonates with wealth. From this moment forward, you no longer need to search for answers outside of yourself. Every answer is already present in the way you think, feel, and live each day. Financial reality is not a matter of luck. It is a subtle mirror, reflecting exactly the consciousness you carry, and if you shift that, your entire life will shift, not by coincidence, not by magic, but by recognizing this one truth. You are the starting point of it all. Every thought about money is a silent command sent to the universe. Each thought you have about money is not just a fleeting reaction in the mind. It is a command, a signal, silently yet powerfully transmitted, connecting to the frequency of life and the universe. Every time you think you lack, the universe takes note. Every time you feel anxious about finances, You are sending an invisible message that scarcity is what you expect. Every time you doubt your own abilities, you are broadcasting a frequency that causes opportunities to quietly pass you by. This is not punishment. It is a natural principle. Life does not respond to what you wish for. It responds to what you deeply believe. Thoughts do not only exist in your head, they ripple outward like waves. A person who regularly thinks in terms of abundance emits a field of safety, openness, and attraction. A person who carries the idea of struggle emits a sense of contraction, doubt, and insecurity. Others may not say anything, but they feel it. And the strange truth is, so do opportunities. So does money. The entire world responds to the frequency you emit each day without even realizing it. From familiar phrases like, I'm not good enough, money is hard to earn, or wealth is not meant for people like me. You are programming an inner operating system that works like a loyal machine. It does not argue, it simply executes the command. This explains why, in the same environment, in the same profession, one person rises quickly while another keeps struggling. It is not a matter of skill, but of frequency. One broadcasts trust and openness. The other broadcasts doubt and self-limitation, and the universe, like a fair and precise mirror, reflects exactly that. You cannot shift this reality by forcing yourself to think positively. You change it by looking directly at the stories you've been replaying in your mind for too long. These stories don't just live in words, they exist in your smallest reactions. The feeling you get when you see someone else succeed, how you respond when a new opportunity arises, the discomfort you feel when someone offers to pay for the value you've created. All of it is evidence of the belief system at work, and that belief system is what determines the commands you are sending out every day. You might believe that thoughts are invisible and therefore harmless, but the truth is, a thought is the blueprint of all visible reality. No building has ever been constructed without first existing in someone's imagination. No financial flow is ever created unless it has first been imagined as a possibility. Everything begins within, and from there, it spreads outward as a living current. When you begin to realize that each thought is a subtle design for your future, you become more careful about what you allow to repeat in your mind. And transformation begins not with a financial plan, but with the quality of your thinking. This is the power of the voice within. Not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. Each person carries an inner voice, not to be listened to passively, but to come home to. A place within that has always known you were not born to live in limitation, a place that has never forgotten who you are, even when you have. When you begin to hear that voice again, each thought will slowly shift its frequency. You will no longer emit the signal of lack, but the frequency of someone who has returned to their rightful place. And at that frequency, everything begins to change. Attraction does not arise from exhausting effort. It arises from the deep resonance between your inner voice and a purified belief system. When you emit thoughts that are clear, steady, and aligned, life responds like a perfect equation. There are no more leaks in energy, no more conflict between what you want and what you believe, only a pure stream of silent commands being transmitted every day, every moment without force. It becomes your new nature, and wealth, like every other good thing, is simply the reward that follows. There is no limit to how you can restore this alignment. It begins with observation. Ask yourself, whenever a thought about money appears, what signal is this sending to the world? Ask yourself when you say no to an opportunity, what inside you believes you are not enough? Ask yourself when you see someone succeed, Are you truly offering blessing or shrinking inside because you feel small? These questions are not to shame you. They are lights shining into the foundation that is silently shaping everything you are experiencing. Wealth does not come from perfect thinking. It comes from thinking in the right direction, with awareness. When you master your stream of thought, you master what you are sending out, and when you send it with a voice that has been realigned, with a frequency that has been elevated, so what returns to you is no longer chance. It is the natural consequence of someone who has learned to broadcast from clarity. That person no longer waits. They redesign themselves through what they think each day. And that is the greatest power anyone can activate from within. The difference between the unsuccessful and the wealthy. One wishes, the other decides. Desire has never been enough to create results. This world is full of people who long for a life of freedom, abundance, and prosperity. But longing does not transform into reality by itself. It is merely the first step, a spark that appears in the mind. What truly creates motion, what creates real change, is decision. Between wanting and deciding lies a vast distance. Wanting allows for delay, for waiting, for turning back when things get hard, but decision does not. When someone truly decides, every other option disappears. There is no plan B, no backup scenario, no what if. There is only one direction forward. The unsuccessful often believe they lack the right opportunity, the right people, or the right skills. But the truth is, they have never made a clear decision. They want it, but they leave room for doubt. They take action, but always hold something back in fear of failure. They move forward, yet keep looking back, hoping someone will guarantee their safety. But hesitation weakens every step. When you have not truly decided, you will live in the gray zone between desire and reality, a place where nothing is certain, nothing is clear, and nothing is strong enough to break through. In contrast, the wealthy are those who once stood at a crossroads and said one definitive thing: I will not turn back. They did not wait until they had enough confidence, enough capital, or enough experience. They decided first and let everything else fall into place afterward. The power of a real decision is not in logic, but in the fact that it arises from the whole being. When you decide, it is not just words or thoughts. It is a unified vibration across your mind, your emotions, and your actions. It is like lighting a torch in the dark. The path that was once hidden becomes visible, not because the world changed, but because you chose from within. Here's something interesting. Those who have not decided often believe they are waiting for the right opportunity. But opportunity only appears after a true decision is made. Before that, even if it shows up, you won't recognize it, you'll question it, overanalyze it, and let it slip away. Because your consciousness is still stuck in wanting, not doing. It's like a boat with its sails down. No matter how strong the wind, it won't take you anywhere. Decision is raising the sail. And once you do, any wind becomes your momentum. The wealthy are not simply those with more money. They are those who have built the habit of making decisions, not impulsive decisions, but ones born from inner clarity. Once they choose, they don't circle around. They don't wait for approval. They create certainty by walking steadily, even when results haven't yet arrived. This is what the unsuccessful often don't understand. They believe they need proof before deciding, but the successful know proof comes after belief, not before it. The difference doesn't lie in where you begin. It doesn't lie in circumstances or luck. It lies in the ability to move from wanting to deciding. One says, I want to live freely, but keeps doing what keeps them trapped. Another says, I want to be wealthy, but still spends like someone who is broke. One says, I want to change, but keeps thinking the same old way. Nothing changes when you stop at wanting. Wanting without decision is just a long illusion. True decision always comes with surrender, surrendering old excuses, surrendering dependence on external certainty, surrendering the need to be guaranteed. It asks you to take full responsibility for your path, and not everyone is willing to carry that weight. Many fear making a decision because they fear being wrong, but indecision itself is the greatest mistake, because it keeps you frozen while everything around you keeps moving. When you truly decide, every cell in your body responds differently. Your voice gains weight. Your eyes no longer wander. Your actions become precise and powerful. Others feel that, and they begin to respond to you, not as someone testing the waters, but someone who is truly moving. This is not recklessness. This is the strength of someone who knows where they are going and no longer allows themselves to live on the sidelines of life. And that is why decision is the dividing line between dreamers and builders, between those who talk about what they'll do one day and those who are quietly doing it every day. No miracle happens before you decide. But once you do, everything begins to shift. Not because the world changed, but because you changed your relationship with it. And when that happens, no matter where you begin, you will find the path, because the real path does not begin ahead of you. It begins right where you stand, the moment you dare to say, once and for all, I choose to move forward. Passion is not enough. You need a clear goal. Passion is the fire, but a goal is the direction. A flame, no matter how strong, if not guided by a clear destination, will eventually burn out in exhaustion or spread aimlessly. So many people today confuse having passion with having direction. They throw themselves into work with excitement, thinking that emotion alone will be enough to lead the way. But when results don't come quickly, when reality doesn't match the dream, they begin to doubt themselves, their choices, and blame circumstances, not because they lack passion, but because they lack a clear destination. Passion without a goal is like a ship full of fuel but no map. It may move fast and with force, but it gets nowhere. In contrast, a person with even a small flame in their heart, if they know where they're going, will make every step count. They don't get swept away by fleeting emotions. They don't let moods dictate direction. They act with intention, building their reality each day with a deep inner resolve. A goal is not just a number on paper. It is an internal commitment. It is an unspoken vow that you will not give up halfway. It helps you hold your course when emotions waver. It reminds you why you started when things get hard. It is the force that gives your actions resonance, because when you have a clear goal, every choice in your day becomes simpler. You no longer have to debate every opportunity that comes your way. You know what aligns with your path and what is simply distraction dressed as sweetness. The unsuccessful often say they've worked hard, that they've tried their best, but the truth is, they acted without focus. They scattered their energy in too many directions. Lacking clarity and strategy, they were easily swayed by trends, by the success of others, and quickly discouraged when results didn't appear, because they didn't have a goal strong enough to anchor their mind through life's waves. In contrast, the wealthy and successful know that passion is necessary, but not sufficient. They don't just do what they love. They turn it into a path with clear milestones, measurable progress, and specific benchmarks. They don't act based on fleeting inspiration. They act from the union between passion and purpose, a blend that generates a quiet but relentless energy no one else can see. That energy is why they keep going, even when no one is watching, no one is cheering, and nothing is guaranteed. The clearer the goal, the more space passion has to take shape. It stops being a romantic feeling and becomes a real resource. It turns into action, into discipline, into a system. A person with passion but no goal is like an artist who begins painting without knowing what the final image should be. They may start with enthusiasm, but the final piece ends up as scattered colors with no meaning. Meanwhile, the one with a clear goal knows exactly what lines to draw. They may take longer to finish, but every stroke builds towards something meaningful. Passion is a gift, but if you don't know where to direct that gift, it becomes a burden. Some people love many things, but because they never choose one clearly, they live in distraction. They try a bit of this, jump to that, and carry a constant sense that they're living beneath their potential. They confuse freedom with a lack of direction, and they use passion as an excuse for avoiding the discipline of setting a real goal. Successful people don't necessarily have more passion than you. They are simply more committed to clarifying what they want and building a roadmap to get there. They understand that a goal is not just a destination, but a reference point for all behavior every day. They align what they do with what they want. And because of that, they rarely lose their way. They may adjust the method or change the pace, but the direction never wavers. You don't need to have all the answers right now, but you do need one powerful question to keep you from drifting. What truly matters to you? What makes you willing to show up even when no one asks you to? What makes you feel aligned with your true nature? And when you find that, don't stop at emotion. Set a clear goal, not to force yourself, but to allow your passion to become a real path. A path that leads to fulfillment, not just externally, but first and foremost within, because a person with a goal lives differently than one who only has passion. They live as someone who knows where they're going. And that is the difference that changes everything. Imagination is the birthplace of every wealthy reality. Nothing that exists in this world ever came into being without first existing in imagination. A house, a melody, a business, a lasting career, all began as mental images, concepts that seemed like nothing, yet became the foundation for everything. Imagination is not just for artists or children. It is the most powerful creative tool a human being possesses, and those who are truly wealthy know how to use it as a map to guide them. They don't wait for reality to confirm what they believe. They imagine first, then use that belief to create the reality. When you imagine clearly, vividly, emotionally, and consistently, you are sending a powerful signal to your entire mind and to the universe. Your mind begins to shift your behavior, your beliefs, your reactions to align with that image. The universe begins to organize people, opportunities, and events to match the frequency you are broadcasting. It all begins with an image, not vague, not daydreamed, but deliberately nurtured, like a command to create. The unsuccessful often use imagination to repeat what they fear. They imagine failure, rejection, lack, and unconsciously begin to live as if it were already true. Their imagination is hijacked by worry. And because imagination does not judge, it takes those fears and uses them as instructions for their emotions, decisions, and actions. They don't realize they are living inside a reality they themselves imagined not one they wanted, but one they feared. In contrast, the wealthy use imagination like an artist painting the canvas of their life. They envision their ideal state of finances, work, relationships, and they act from that image. It's not that they never worry, but they choose not to feed it. They know what you imagine repeatedly becomes your standard. And that standard sinks into the subconscious like a hidden current, guiding all your behavior. Imagination doesn't do the work for you. It is the first stage of creation. It is where you design what doesn't yet exist. It's not about escaping reality, it's about leading it. When you imagine with purpose, you begin to live like someone moving towards something, not someone waiting for a miracle. You start behaving differently, speaking differently, choosing differently, and those choices begin to create a different reality. Look at anyone who has created breakthroughs in any field. They didn't simply do what others had done. They imagined a new possibility and acted from that place. No one else could see what they saw, but they moved anyway, because to them, imagination is not fantasy. It is the most real part of the creative self. And if they hold that image long enough, the world has no choice but to shift and reflect what they've carried inside. Imagination is not limited by your current reality, but it will be limited if you only use it to replay your past. You cannot create the new if you're constantly recycling the old. Creativity only emerges when you allow yourself to see beyond what is. The wealthy do this every day. They don't imagine to escape. They imagine to guide. They see what isn't yet here and then move toward it, not waiting for it to appear before they believe it's possible. Imagination is a spiritual practice that must be trained. If you're not used to it, the images in your mind will be scattered, weak, or easily overtaken by doubt. But if you spend time each day imagining what you truly want, with emotion aligned, you begin generating a new frequency. That frequency becomes your state of being. And from there, you begin to resonate with what was once thought impossible. Wealth begins with a clearly imagined image, one nurtured long enough to become a felt truth. It does not begin with spreadsheets or business plans. It begins with the willingness to believe that imagination is not a game, but a sacred tool given to you, not to replicate, but to create. And when you truly live inside the image you've imagined, you no longer act out of fear or lack. You act because you've already seen the result. And that is the difference between those who create reality from the deepest level and those who wait for the world to prove something first. Once you understand that imagination is the source of every wealthy reality, you stop wasting it on what you don't want. You begin to reserve your inner space to design only what reflects the truest essence of who you are. And then, day by day, choice by choice, action by action, your external world becomes the visible translation of the vision you once painted in your mind. A vision only you can draw, a reality only you can step into. Knowledge must be organized into a system of concrete action. Knowledge alone does not change your life. It is only when knowledge is reorganized into a system of clear, actionable steps that it begins to transform your reality. The unsuccessful often accumulate massive amounts of information, taking course after course, reading dozens of books, yet their lives remain mostly the same, because they have never turned what they've learned into what they can lead with. They confuse understanding with realization. They think knowing is enough. But in truth, knowledge without application only adds weight and confusion to the mind. Knowledge is like raw material. You can have a warehouse full of rare ingredients, but if you don't know how to organize them into a clear recipe, you cannot create a meal. The wealthy don't necessarily learn more than you, but they organize what they know into simple, repeatable systems of action. They don't keep cramming in new content every day. Instead, they ask, how can I turn what I already know into something that can be implemented, measured, and repeated? Financial success does not come from how much you know, but from how much of what you know you actually put into action. Every piece of knowledge not converted into action is a block of trapped energy. And trapped energy cannot multiply. It weighs you down, fuels procrastination, and fosters self-doubt. Meanwhile, those who operate from a simple system feel lighter because they don't have to remember everything. They simply stick to clearly structured steps. An action system doesn't have to be complex. In fact, the simpler it is, the easier it is to repeat, and what's repeated consistently becomes sustainable. Successful people create core principles for themselves and commit to living by them. Rather than constantly chasing something new, they understand that stability is not found in a variety of information, but in the precision of behaviors built from inner clarity. They don't jump from idea to idea. They go deep. They build structures strong enough to sustain themselves. The unsuccessful keep knowledge in their heads. The successful bring it into their bodies and turn it into habit. They don't talk much about what they know, but you can see their understanding in how they work, relate, and decide. They don't depend on motivation. They have a system that moves them forward, even when emotion runs low. That's the difference between someone who turns knowledge into a living language and someone who just keeps recording it. An action system can begin as simply as this: a fixed time block for your most important work, a 3-step process for solving problems, a weekly tracker for specific results. What matters is not how complicated your system is, but whether you are using it. Because when you begin to act through a system, you start building certainty. Every step you take today becomes a brick for tomorrow's foundation. And from that foundation, you no longer guess. You look back, adjust, and upgrade. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. Your inner voice does not speak in words. It shows itself in the structure you choose to live by each day. It doesn't require you to know everything. It only asks that you be honest with what you already know and act from that. When you return to that space, the complicated becomes clear. You stop chasing new information to fill an internal void. You pause, look at the core, and begin building from the inside. An orderly life doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from whether you can organize your inner world into living systems. You can be full of inspiration and talent, but if you lack a clear structure to channel it, you'll drift. Meanwhile, the one with a system always has a fallback, always knows the next step, always has a place to return when things get chaotic. Knowledge only holds value when it's translated into consistent action. And consistent action only lasts when upheld by a simple system. That's how the wealthy build wealth, not in giant leaps, but in disciplined steps. Repeated over time, they are not necessarily more intelligent. They simply have a stronger internal structure, and that is what keeps them from being swayed by outside forces. From this moment forward, instead of looking for something new, pause and ask, what do I already know but haven't lived? What can I turn into a clear daily action? And what can I do to redesign my living system so that it's simple but effective? When you begin to live with structure, you don't just save time, you save energy, reduce doubt, and increase your ability to replicate results. That is the foundation where lasting wealth begins, built from the inside out. Autosuggestion is the most powerful process for reprogramming the subconscious mind. Autosuggestion is not a psychological trick. It is the most powerful tool available to reprogram the subconscious, the true command center that determines how you live and what you achieve. People do not act according to what they know. They act according to what has been deeply programmed within. And most of that programming did not come from conscious choice. It came from the environment, from unconscious repetition, from words others imposed on you when you were still too young to question them. You may not realize it, but you've been subjected to autosuggestion every single day through limiting phrases like, I'm not good enough, money is hard to earn, I'm not as lucky as others. These statements, repeated long enough, became the reality you live in, not because they were true, but because you never challenged them. In contrast, Successful people do not allow their subconscious to run on default. They intentionally rewrite the internal code. They use autosuggestion as a deliberate method, repeating positive, clear, and powerful commands designed to create a new self. It's not that they simply say nice words. They know that each repetition rewrites the internal source code behind every behavior. The subconscious does not distinguish truth from falsehood. It only responds to what is repeated consistently enough. And once something is repeated enough times, it becomes real, because the subconscious begins to run the program. You can see someone begin their day by silently saying, "I'm not good at speaking. I'm afraid to fail. I don't deserve to be wealthy." They don't call it autosuggestion, but it is a negative form of it. And soon, their entire response to opportunity, to challenge, to people, is shaped by those phrases. In contrast, those who understand how to command their subconscious begin the day with empowering affirmations. I am always learning. I am worthy of abundance. I am becoming the best version of myself. It may feel awkward at first, but that awkwardness is the sign that you're stepping beyond old programming. Effective autosuggestion is built on three elements: clear language, emotional resonance, and consistent repetition. If you say the words without feeling, the subconscious won't absorb them. If you say them once or twice and stop, it won't be enough to form a new pattern. If you speak in vague or general terms, the signal will be too weak to redirect the internal system. This is why those who master this tool understand that it is a daily practice, one that requires the full presence of both heart and mind. The power of autosuggestion does not just shift your behavior, it shifts how you see yourself. When you change how you name yourself in your own inner world, you begin to act differently. A person who once said, "I'm not capable," and now repeats, "I am growing every day," will begin to make different choices in critical moments. They step out of avoidance. They face challenges. They express themselves not because they've become smarter, but because they no longer assume they are small. The real question is not whether you are using autosuggestion, but in which direction. Everyone is doing it, either unconsciously or intentionally. You can let your mind be programmed by negative news, judgment, and social fear, or you can turn inward, choose the phrases you want to live by, and make them the primary code of your subconscious. It doesn't need to be complicated. Choose a few affirmations that reflect the version of yourself you want to become. Memorize them and repeat them daily with the most honest emotion you can summon. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. Inside you is a voice strong enough to reset the course of your entire life. But if you don't feed it the words, it will be filled with old, negative, and worse, borrowed voices that aren't even yours. Autosuggestion is the journey of returning and rewriting the story you truly want to live, not through logic, but through emotion aligned with action. When you truly understand this power, you will stop speaking carelessly about yourself. You will become mindful of every word you use to define who you are. You will refuse to repeat small, limiting, victim-like phrases. You will choose how to name yourself and hold that name as a non-negotiable belief. And from there, everything begins to change, not from outside, but from the structure of language you implant in the deepest part of your mind. Autosuggestion does not require you to fully believe at the beginning. It only asks that you be committed enough to plant the new seed each day. Belief will follow action, and eventually you will look back and realize everything you're living today began as a phrase you once whispered in silence. That is how the successful shape their inner world, not through luck or chance, but through deliberate choice and unwavering consistency in what they program. And you can begin the same right now. No one can stop you from rewriting the code within, and there is no limit to what becomes possible when you dare to do it with your whole self. Daily action is the evidence that you are truly serious about wealth. You say you are serious about wealth, but what story are your daily actions telling? What is your morning routine whispering to your subconscious? Where are the choices you make in quiet moments leading you? Ask yourself this: if a stranger were to silently observe your life for a week, without hearing your words, only watching your actions, would they believe you've truly chosen wealth? Belief is not in words. Belief is most clearly expressed through action. And the action you repeat each day is the strongest declaration you are sending to the universe. Many people say they desire abundance, yet they live each day as if wealth is a distant luxury. They make no preparation for it. They don't study for it. They don't act like someone who already owns it. They procrastinate. They make excuses. They compromise. They don't realize that every time they choose comfort over commitment, they are telling their subconscious they are not yet ready. And the subconscious listens. It keeps maintaining the current state because you yourself are instructing it that this is acceptable. On the other hand, those who are truly serious about wealth don't need to proclaim it. Every small action they take is already a declaration. They are not perfect, but they are consistent. They don't need motivation because they have discipline. They don't chase emotions because they have systems. They understand that wealth does not come from one grand gesture, but from hundreds of small behaviors repeated steadily over time. They do not act from inspiration. They act from decision. Are you working each day like someone who is committed to prosperity? Are you getting up on time? Are you investing time in learning? Are you putting down your phone to pick up your vision? Are you placing limits on procrastination? Are you saying no to distractions? Are you saying yes to small but meaningful actions? The answer isn't in the future. It is already revealed in how you are living today. Wealth doesn't test you through dreams. It tests you through behavior. It doesn't arrive through flashes of inspiration, but through sustained commitment to the journey. Every time you act toward your financial goal, even in the smallest way, you are generating a new frequency in your field, and that frequency begins to attract things in alignment. You don't have to control every outcome. You only need to ensure that each day is a clear statement. I have chosen this path, and I will not leave it. The undisciplined blame circumstances. The disciplined create new ones. They understand that action is the fastest way to override doubt, and the clearest proof to the subconscious that a decision has been made. The subconscious doesn't respond to wishes. It responds to behavior, and consistent behavior is the signal that a new command has been installed. From there, your entire inner system begins to reorganize to align with that command. You don't need to begin with something massive. You only need to begin with what is right and repeat it. 1 hour a day for learning. 3 things written each morning for focus. 5 minutes of meditation to return inward. 10 minutes each night to review your alignment. These are not small tasks. They are the foundation stones of those who are truly serious, quiet, unflashy, but unmistakably clear. So clear that no explanation is needed, others will feel it. This is the power of voice within. Not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. Every action you choose each day is how you return to that voice. It doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for honesty. Honesty with what you've chosen. Honesty with the vision you carry. Honesty with the soul that keeps whispering to you every day you were not born for survival. You were born for fullness. And now, I want to ask you, are you acting like someone who has truly chosen wealth? Pause for a moment and look at the rhythm of your life. Answer not with words, but with change. If you're still listening, I know you care deeply about your path. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for listening with your whole heart. And if there's something within you that wants to begin right after this ends, don't wait until tomorrow. One small action now is the first seed of a great harvest. Perseverance is the secret successful people never miss. Success does not choose the smartest. It chooses the most persistent. It is not the faster one who reaches the finish line, but the one who doesn't stop midway. On the journey to wealth, there will always be phases where results do not catch up with effort. There will be days when you give your all and still see no progress. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, doubt the path, doubt everything you once believed in. And it is in those very moments that perseverance becomes the greatest difference between those who succeed and those who give up. Perseverance is not mechanical repetition. It is a daily choice, regardless of emotions. Persistent people are not always excited, but they always honor their commitment. They understand that every step, no matter how small, contributes to a bigger picture. They do not measure their worth by temporary outcomes. They look at their consistency and their ability to hold the vision in days of uncertainty. That is why they surpass others, not because of luck, but because of a non-negotiable resilience. Those who lack perseverance often mistakenly believe that if something is right, it should be easy. They think that if they have made the right choice, everything will flow smoothly. But the truth is, every worthwhile journey must pass through challenges not to make you suffer, but to test whether you're truly serious. Challenges don't come to stop you. They come to purify you. They filter out those who want quick wins, easy outcomes, and rewards without paying the price. And they retain those who are truly committed to lasting transformation. Successful people are always mentally prepared for phases with no light. They are not surprised when progress slows down. They don't panic when the market shifts or when a plan fails. They adjust, but they don't quit. They adapt, but they don't waver. They understand that perseverance doesn't mean stubbornly repeating the wrong thing. It means steadily finding the right way and continuing, even when results haven't appeared. They do not let temporary emotions decide their long-term destiny. Perseverance is the highest expression of faith. When you keep taking action without seeing anything change, that is when you are planting the strongest seeds, because you are no longer acting for validation or visibility. You are acting because you know it is the right thing to do. And that consistency is the most powerful signal you can send to your subconscious and to the universe that you have truly become the person aligned with what you desire. No one sees the process of a seed underground. It has no flowers, no leaves, no visible signs of growth, yet it is cracking its shell, reaching roots into the soil, absorbing nutrients, preparing for a spectacular emergence. Financial and spiritual growth are no different. There will be stages where no one acknowledges you, no one sees your effort, no result appears. But if you persist long enough, what you've done in silence will become a foundation so strong others cannot imitate. The persistent don't care about speed. They care about direction. They don't need to win in 1 month. They make sure they're on the right path for years. They don't stop to compare themselves to others because they understand every journey has its own pace. They only look back to adjust and move forward. Their endurance is not in loud declarations, but in the quiet decision to keep going, without reminders, without witnesses, doing what needs to be done every single day. You cannot know when the result will arrive, but you can be sure of what happens if you give up, and because of that, persistent people always hold the advantage. They go where others can't. simply because they don't exit too early. They believe in the law of time and accumulation. They know that if you do the right thing long enough, with enough awareness, results become inevitable. Perseverance is not a constant high. It is a decision repeated regardless of shifting moods. Those who don't understand this confuse lost motivation with lost direction. They rest and forget their goals. They take a break and never return. Meanwhile, the persistent may slow down, but they never leave the track. They know how to renew themselves without renewing the goal. Every time it gets hard. If there is one quality that all successful people share, it's not innate talent. It's not favorable circumstances. It's perseverance. Because when you have truly chosen to live aligned with a higher vision, then nothing can replace the ability to keep walking one small step at a time, every day. And the miracle is, those small steps, if you don't give up, will take you to places the fastest but unsteady ones never reach. Every mind reprogramming must be anchored in real-world action. No sustainable transformation ever takes place solely in the mind without corresponding action. You can listen to hundreds of affirmations, fill journals with emotional reflections, and visualize a radiant future. But if you do nothing differently afterward, it all remains an echo in your head, never touching reality. Every mental reprogramming must be anchored in real-world action. Without that, the subconscious has no reason to believe you're serious. It doesn't change just because you think differently. It changes only when you act differently. When you affirm that you are disciplined but hit the snooze button every morning, the subconscious believes your action, not your words. When you write down financial goals but spend every bit of money on short-term gratification, the subconscious records that behavior as your true priority. It is not your words, but your daily way of living that reshapes the structure deep within. That is why every process of healing, upgrading, or transformation must be tightly bound to clear, repeated action. You cannot claim to be purpose-driven if you never plan your week. You cannot say you value yourself while constantly saying yes to what you don't want. You cannot declare belief in abundance while behaving like someone afraid of loss. The subconscious doesn't care about the philosophy you read. It cares only about the behavior you choose. And so if you're truly serious about rewriting yourself, you must tie each new mental code to symbolic, behavior-based acts that can redefine your inner identity. A small but consistent action has far greater power than a grand but vague thought. Sitting at your desk on time each morning is a declaration to your subconscious that you are disciplined. Every time you say no to an invitation misaligned with your direction, you reaffirm your boundaries. Every step you take in alignment with your goal, no matter how invisible the result is, a way you reinforce your trust in the path. Inner change does not arrive in a flash. It happens in the steady rhythm of small, committed actions, like the heartbeat that feeds life into every cell. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. The voice within doesn't need to be loud, only clear, and that clarity comes from action. When you live in alignment with what you tell yourself each day, that voice grows stronger. It is no longer a faint whisper drowned out by external noise. It becomes the inner resonance that guides your way. That is when you no longer need to remind yourself to believe, because you're already living as if it were true. And only then does the subconscious begin to rewire. Those who fail to change are not lacking knowledge. They're missing the action that bridges what they know and how they live. They drown in personal growth theory, yet repeat old patterns. They read about wealth, yet behave like the impoverished. They write beautiful truths in journals, yet reinforce limiting behaviors every day. The contradiction between what they think and what they do sends a chaotic signal, preventing the subconscious from forming any new structure. And so, They return to old patterns in an endless loop. To truly change, you must ensure that every internal program you're rewriting is paired with symbolic action. If you're learning self-love, the concrete action might be caring for your body, saying no when needed, refusing to carry what is not yours. If you're cultivating wealth, it may be tracking your finances, investing in your learning, eliminating wasteful habits. Every action becomes a brick in the new internal architecture you are building. You don't need to change everything at once. Just choose one behavior that reflects the new value you wish to embody and commit to it daily. When you do this, you stop living by emotion and begin living by inner guidance. And the miracle is, even before the outcome shows up, you already feel different. That is the sign the subconscious is beginning to receive the new code. You don't need to force belief. Consistent action will forge a belief stronger than any speech. The mind is brilliant, but also practical. It only changes when it sees evidence. That evidence is behavior. No one changes by just reading, listening, or writing. True transformation belongs to those who translate every insight into measurable, repeatable steps they can live out daily. That is how they rebuild themselves from the inside out, no longer dependent on circumstance, no longer stuck in the question of why things haven't changed, because they know when the action is right, everything else begins to align. And that is the only path to true, lasting, and meaningful transformation. The new operating system must become default, not a conditional effort. True transformation does not happen when you try to maintain a new system through temporary effort. It only occurs when the new operating system becomes your default, when you no longer need to think in order to choose, but instead naturally live that truth as a reflex. Every conditional effort is fragile. If you still need to remind yourself to believe, you haven't truly believed. If you still have to force yourself to act, you haven't truly integrated it into your identity. Wealth, or any profound transformation, doesn't come from struggling to sustain a new self. It comes from becoming it. Many people begin their self-development journey with excitement, only to fall into the cycle of short-term effort. They commit for a week, a month, but when results don't appear fast enough, they return to the old system, old thinking, old emotions, old behaviors. What they don't realize is the old system is still their default. They are only running the new one in a temporary mode, driven by motivation or expectation. And because the update hasn't reached the deeper layers, any small disruption sends them right back into familiar patterns. If you constantly have to suppress a habit, it means the structure hasn't changed. If you still struggle every time you make the right choice, it means there are still conflicting belief systems within. Real transformation happens when what once required effort becomes something you cannot not do. When the new way of living becomes so natural that you no longer remember ever being different. When wealth is no longer something you chase, but a frequency you radiate. Because the operating system inside you has synchronized with it. For that to happen, you must stop treating transformation like a campaign. Personal growth is not a 30-day program. It is a permanent update process. Every day you live aligned with the new system. You reinforce it. Every time you revert to the old way, you weaken it. Just like a newly paved path, walk it often enough, and it becomes your trail. Abandon it, and the weeds return. And then, no matter how much you know, you'll be pulled back into old ways by the very structure you failed to rewire. You must let the transformation seep into the smallest details of your life, not just during courses or meditation, but in how you walk, how you speak, how you respond to rejection, how you view money, how you plan. Every moment is a chance to reaffirm who you are, not for others, but for yourself. And only when you live it consistently in reality, without declarations or justifications, does the new system truly become your foundation. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. The inner voice doesn't need to shout to be heard. It only needs you to stop ignoring it. Each time you live in alignment with your inner vision, that voice grows stronger. And one day, you realize you no longer have to call yourself into action, because action has become your new instinct. You've internalized it. You no longer need discipline to maintain it, because who you are has changed. It is no longer effort. It is your default. Stop waiting for change to come from the outside. No victory is large enough to keep you elevated if your inner structure still runs on outdated programming. And conversely, no external circumstance is low enough to pull you down if your internal operating system has been upgraded. Wealth does not begin with money, but with a new inner state, repeated long enough to become your new standard. From that point on, every decision, every choice, every interaction will automatically align with that frequency. You don't need to say you've changed. Let others feel it through how you live. When someone tells you you've really changed, but you feel like you're simply being yourself, that's when the new system has been integrated. No longer a performance, no longer a strategy, but the authentic portrait of someone who has updated themselves from the roots. And when you live from that place, you no longer pursue a success. You embody it. Remember, you were not born with limiting defaults. You learned them programmed by environment, experiences, and the voices of others. And because it was learned, it can be unlearned and replaced. But only when you stop living in the old version, as if it were truth. When you begin acting from the new identity consistently, even without seeing results, you begin rewriting the entire script. And if that program is stable enough, it will no longer require willpower to maintain. It will run on its own as second nature. That is the true destination of transformation. Not endless effort, but a shift so complete that you can never go back. Total decision, a commitment with no turning back. True transformation does not begin with knowledge, nor does it come from fleeting inspiration or half-hearted attempts. It begins with one thing only, a total decision, a decision not made to test, a decision with no backup plan, a decision with no turning back. When you decide from the deepest place in your soul, where there is no longer any negotiation, the universe begins to move, not because the universe needs you to be strong, but because, at last, you have become clear. A total decision is not like the resolutions you write every New Year and forget by the first month. It's not like those moments when you say you'll change, but still leave a back door to retreat to your comfort zone. It is a decision born at the intersection of deep enough pain and great enough desire, when you see clearly that you can no longer keep living the old way, and you no longer doubt the new path. That is when you know you've truly decided, not because you know every step ahead, but because you've stopped questioning yourself. Successful people are not those who know more, but those who decide faster and commit longer. They don't wait for everything to be perfect before beginning. They don't need all conditions to be in their favor. They only need one thing, clarity that says, I have chosen. And from that point on, every action becomes simple. No more inner struggle. No more back and forth between should and shouldn't. All energy flows in one direction, and that focus creates a momentum stronger than any technique you could ever learn. Have you ever looked back and realized that what you lacked was not opportunity, not tools, but decisiveness? How many times have you stepped in with one foot only to pull out when things got hard? How many times have you said you'd change, but still held on to some part of your old self? How many times have you told yourself you were waiting for the right time, when in truth you were delaying a decision? And you are not alone. We all go through that. But if you truly want to step into a completely new life, there will come a time when you must place your entire being on the table of change. No conditions, no exceptions. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. When you truly decide, that voice becomes so powerful that nothing can confuse you. You no longer need motivation because you've already burned the boats. You no longer need approval because your path is clear. You act not because you are certain of success, but because you are no longer willing to live as you once did. And that state is the true soil of rebirth. A total decision is not a loud declaration. It is quiet, yet unmistakably clear. It needs no explanation, yet everyone feels its presence. You no longer react to life, you create it. You no longer waver between past and future. You become fully present in each step. You no longer ask how to maintain it, because your decision itself becomes a self-generating source of energy. It doesn't run out because it doesn't depend on outside conditions. From the moment you truly decide, change becomes irreversible. What no longer serves you begins to fall away. What you need begins to appear, not because those things were there and made you decide, but because you decided, and so they were allowed to come. The universe never denies you. It only waits for your clarity. And clarity does not come from the mind. It comes from the soul, from the place within you that knows you can no longer spend one more day living as the old version of yourself. The truth is, every great thing in the history of humankind began with a total decision. One person who dared to say no to mediocrity. One person who stood apart from the crowd and chose their own path. One person who didn't wait for permission. One person who stopped asking. One person who saw the truth within themselves and chose to live by it, no matter what. And if you're still reading this, perhaps you are standing at the threshold of such a decision. And when you cross that line, you don't become someone new. You finally return to your truest self, the one you've known all along, but never had the courage to fully live as the one who no longer waits for miracles, because they have become the miracle, the one whose every breath, every action, every choice is a quiet but fierce affirmation that the path has been chosen, and there will be no retreat. That is the moment you no longer need to change, because you have been transformed. You no longer live to try. You live to declare, and nothing can stop you anymore. You were not born to live in survival mode. You were not born to chase every dollar in a state of panic. You were born to remember that everything you seek is already within you. This 16-part journey does not give you a secret formula. It leads you back to the deepest voice inside yourself, the place that needs no convincing, only your return. And when you begin to live from that place, every door opens without you needing to knock. Act from commitment, not emotion. Live as if wealth is not a goal, but a default. I'll meet you at the higher version of yourself, where you are no longer the seeker, but the one fully living what you once only wished for.